Whether you're stuck on knee push-ups, regular push-ups, or even handstand push-ups, this will help you break through your plateaus and unlock the next step. Now, I'm not saying that this key will instantly unlock all these moves for you. You still have to practice, but once you start to apply this, the progress should feel steady and predictable, so you have to worry less about whether or not you're on the right track and more about just building the strength and making the progress. Now, the first step is going to be understanding the shoulder anatomy. And before we cover this, I want to play a little bit of a game or exercise with you. I do this with most of my new students, and it goes like this. I want you to imagine your arm bone, which is going to be carrying your upper body in a push-up, and try to imagine how are the bones connected to the rest of your body. How can adding a force on the arm transfer to the rest of the body and move it in a push-up, and a knee push-up, or in a handstand push-up? Now here, most of my clients will say, oh, there's the arm bone, there's a ball on the top, and there's like a socket and it can turn, and that's how you move your shoulders. That's true. But I want you to visualize that socket. How does it look like? And how is it connected to the ribs? How is it connected to the shoulder blade? A lot of people imagine the shoulder blade all the way back here and the shoulder all the way in front, but how are they connected? Let's check it out. Okay, so we have a human model in front of us, and right away you might start to notice that I kind of tricked you by saying the shoulder is all the way in front and the shoulder blade is all the way in the back, because if you look at the arm bone, it connects directly and only to the shoulder blade. The shoulder blade is the shoulder joint. The only connection in terms of bones between the arm and the rest of the body is through the shoulder blade. Now, since it's only through the shoulder blade, you might start to ask, okay, well, how is the shoulder blade connected to the rest of the body? And you might look here and say, oh, it's through the collarbone, through the clavicle. And yes, a little bit of the forces transfer through there, but I've met several people with pain here on the front of the shoulder, and even I've struggled with that a little bit due to lack of engagement in the proper way, which we'll talk about. So instead of only transferring loads through here, you want to transfer load directly from the big scapula or shoulder blade to the rib cage. But you might start to notice that the scapula is what we call a floating joint. You see how it floats here? So it's not like the hip where everything is stacked. You see the leg bone is transferring directly to the hip bone, directly to the spine. It's stacked and gravity is helping. Here, sorry, I didn't mean to click on this, but in the shoulder blade or the scapula, it's a floating joint. So we have to rely on the muscles to stabilize it as we do the movements. Now we will show this in a real life example, but first let's look at the muscles in this model really quick. A lot of people think that, oh, push-ups is chest muscles, pec major. So if I look here for pectoralis major, you'll notice that the pec major only connects from the arm bones directly to the clavicle and the sternum, bypassing the shoulder blade. So it might still feel unstable and feel like it's going to peel off. If you've heard of scapular winging, some people will have pain between the shoulder blade and the spine while they're doing push-ups. So instead, or in addition, we want to also activate the pec minor, which connects the shoulder blade to the rib cage. Now, I said the scapula might peel, and you might think, oh, that still might happen here because there's nothing activating on the back side, on the other side, on the blade side. So here we cover the serratus anterior. And the serratus anterior connects from the shoulder blade, from the inside, if you can see here, all the way to the front of the rib, above and below the arm. So these two muscles in conjunction glue the scapula to the ribcage so that when you press, you're pressing down, it goes through the scapula and it lifts the whole body through the ribcage. Now, these aren't the only muscles. So, for example, if you're doing a complex movement that involves multiple directions, you might have to have I'll show all of the muscles. You might have to use the levator scapula, from the scapula to the neck. You might have to use the rhomboid. You might have to use I'm not showing here, but the trapezius, bigger. Let's show it really quick. So you might use this bigger muscle, all of the muscles that, and you might even co-contract. By the way, this is showing teres major, but you don't really need to contract it. You don't even need to memorize these muscles. You just need to feel that you're contracting a bunch of muscles to keep the scapula glued to the rib cage. And actually, we're going to see it in a real life example now. Check this out. Jillian is going to help me with this demo. And first, I'm going to ask her to keep the elbow relaxed and the shoulder relaxed. If I move her hand, I'm moving her hand, but the rest of the body is not moving. So this is not very efficient for the kind of movements we want to do. But if I ask her to lock her elbow and the shoulder is still relaxed, I didn't say anything about the shoulder, I'm starting to move her hand, still her body is not moving, maybe a little bit, but there's a lot of waste of energy. It's not very efficient. Now, if I asked her to lock the elbow and lock the shoulder, keeping the shoulder blade exactly where it is with the relationship to the ribcage, then every bit of movement I add will result in moving her entire body. This is very efficient for the kind of movements we want to do. Now, you might be wondering, okay, but we're doing push-ups, so we are bending the elbow. Check this out. Jillian can bend the elbow and can make it still behave like a straight arm, still engage in the shoulder, and even though the elbow is bent, I can still move her entire body by moving her hand. But the problem occurs when people are still engaged in the elbow, but lose some of the engagement in the shoulder. So now this behaves like a straight arm, but a lot of waste is happening here. So tense the shoulder again, keep this locked, and notice every bit of movement is being efficiently transferred to the rest of her body. Even now that we fully understand how it works, it will still be very tricky to start getting the hang of it in practice. So let's talk about it. I'm here in a plank and I'm pushing tall, shoulders down, not sinking, pushing tall. How can I now go down in the push-up without sinking and then going down? I want to still be pushing tall and be able to go down and come up. And the key here is separating what's happening from the arm bone below or the middle of the humerus below to the middle of the humerus above. So from the middle of the humerus below, yes, I am bending and coming up, but from the middle of the humerus above, I'm still pushing tall. So still the shoulder blade is going down until I bend. We're going to make it a little bit more realistic in a bit, but check this out. I'm pushing tall, I'm engaged, and I come down with the elbows and come back up, still pushing tall. Now this is much easier to show in different angles. So I'm going to show it in the context of a dip, and then I'm going to show it in the context of a handstand push-up. In the context of a dip, I can be pushing tall like this, or I can be sinking into the shoulders like this. In both cases, I can be doing dips with the elbows. Check this out. I'm pushing tall and I'm doing dips with the elbows. I don't have a lot of range here, so I can't go very deep. Or I'm not pushing tall and I'm doing dips. Or I start pushing tall and as I'm doing dips, I lose it. It doesn't feel good. Already I feel not very good. In the context of a handstand push-up, you gotta hear it to the end because it's gonna be a little bit different. Although it looks like I'm pushing tall with the shoulders to ears, and then as I go down, I come like this, and then I come back up. That's not true. That's an illusion. In reality, what I'm doing is I'm pushing tall, and even as I go down, I'm still pushing tall with the shoulders. Now, here's where there's a little bit of subtlety. Pushing tall for beginners is explained as protraction, putting the shoulders forward. But you don't want to do your push-ups just like this, shoulders forward and keep them forward, maybe as a beginner. But eventually, you want to go from protracted to neutral, but still be fighting, still be pushing tall. So just like Jillian had her arm locked and I can move her, but also she'd have her elbow bent and I can move her, you can have the scapula pushing all the way or almost all the way, but still be fighting, still be solid as I push into the push-up. And once you start to get this, of course, you gotta film yourself a lot, you gotta feel it a lot, and you gotta, over time, build a stronger and stronger connection. Then you will progress so much faster with any kind of push-up.